Hello everybody to today's seminar. Today will be the last seminar of the semester, and it will be given by Sukrut Monkar, our own physics student from IIT Madras. So over to you, Sukrut, to tell us about what you have found recently.
Yeah, so this is the title of the talk. It is about quasi-normal modes of a semi-holographic black hole and also the thermalization of this system. So it is based on an upcoming paper with all of these. I think all of them are in the audience. Okay, so this is the outline of the talk. First, I will give the motivation for this work. Then I will explain the model where we couple the massless scalar field on the boundary with a black hole in the bulk, which is dual to an holographic strongly coupled CFT. Then we study the response of this system to some small perturbations about equilibrium, which is captured by the quasi-normal modes of this hybrid system. We study, so we have studied this for homogeneous as well as non-homogeneous cases. And we also, and I also described the thermalization of this hybrid system, starting from some non-equilibrium state, where it reaches to the thermal equilibrium. Yeah, so let me get started. Yeah, so semi-holography has been proposed as a framework which consistently combines both perturbative and non-perturbative degrees of freedom of theories such as QCD. So one place where such a framework would be applicable is describe dynamics of the matter producing heavy ion collisions, which involves both the perturbative as well as non-perturbative degrees of freedom simultaneously, and their dynamics cannot be factorized. So the way in this framework, the two sectors, perturbative and non-perturbative sectors, talk with each other is as follows. We promote the marginal or relevant couplings or effective background metrics of each sector to functional of the of gauge invariant operators of the other sector. So throughout the talk, I will use this code where the perturbative sector, the quantities corresponding to perturbative sector will be in blue color, and those of the non-perturbative sector will be in red color. So yeah, so this idea of coupling will be more clear when I give us explicit example. So this framework of semi-holography is based on the following premises. Firstly, the non-perturbative dynamics can be described by some strongly coupled quantum field theory, which is holographic. So in the large n limit, it can be described by classical gravity theory. And then the interaction between the two sectors, perturbative and the non-perturbative, which is holographic sector, it can be described by marginal and relevant deformations of the respective theories, as I described before, mentioned before, which I will give the explicit example later. This framework guarantees that there always exists some local and conserved energy momentum tensor of the whole system. Yeah, so I will describe this with the help of example of scalar. Yes. Okay, yeah. So yeah, I will describe this with the example of scalar couplings. Yeah, scalar semi-holographic couplings. So it is. Okay, so this example is based on this paper by Christian, Ayan, and Tony, who are in the audience. So here, the perturbative dynamics was modeled by a classical Yang-Mills theory, living in flat Minkowski space. So the motivation is that so this choice is motivated by the fact that based on the color glass condensate theory, which describes the early stages of heavy ion collisions, the overly occupied states can be described by classical gauge fields. So that motivates this choice, that the perturbative sector was some Yang-Mills field, classical Yang-Mills field. Then the holographic sector or the non-perturbative sector was given by some holographic CFT at finite temperature. So, so this is the action of this system, this semi-holographic system, the first expression, where the first term is that of the Yang-Mills sector. So this F mu will be the field strength tensor, and trace of F square will be the gauge invariant scalar operator that we can construct from the gauge fields. Then this WCFT means the effective action of the CFT that describes the holographic sector. And there is also an interaction term in the action, which is proportional to this coupling called beta, which is called a semi-holographic coupling that is introduced in this model. Yeah, so as I said before, that the interaction between two sectors are described by promoting couplings of each sector to the functions of operators of the complement sector. So following that, if you see these two equations, so chi of x, which is the essentially deforms this Yang-Mills action. So that is a functional of this holographic operator h of x of the holographic theory, scalar operator, and this small h of x, which would deform this holographic sector, is proportional to this the operator of the Yang-Mills sector, which is trace f square. And each of these couplings are marginal, h of x and chi of x. Sorry. Yeah, and so just the form of this action is sufficient to ensure this sort of couplings. So we just these are essentially the equations of motion for chi x and h of x that we can get by varying this action. So, yeah, so by putting these two equations again in the action, we can get the simpler form of the action, where the first term is just the standard Yang-Mills action, and the second term is this effective action of the CFT, where the source h of x is proportional to the operator of the perturbative sector with this semi-holographic coupling beta. Yeah, so in the large n limit, we know that the strongly coupled CFT will be given by just the classical Einstein gravity. So therefore, this effective action of CFT, WCFT, is just equal to the renormalized on-shell action of the corresponding gravity theory, which will be just the Einstein gravity with a negative cosmological constant and a bulk dilaton field. Massless bulk dilaton field which will be dual to this CFT operator, this math cal h of x. And the source small h of x will be just the leading term in the near boundary expansion of this dual dilaton field. Yeah, so one can easily get the energy momentum tensor from this action of the full system, and it has this structure. So first term is just the standard energy momentum tensor for the Yang-Mills. Then the second term is the holographic energy momentum tensor, which we can get from the holographic part. And there is also a third term, the interaction term, which essentially involves the two operators, trace of f square from perturbative sector, and this h, the holographic scalar operator. And eta mu is just the Minkowski metric, since we are working in the Minkowski metric. Yeah, so as it was found in this paper, if we start with some non-equilibrium initial state of the system, then the energy in this perturbative or the Yang-Mills sector gets completely transferred to the black hole in the bulk, because this CFT is dual to the sorry, the CFT is a finite temperature CFT. The dual geometry will be that of a black hole. Yeah, so this so the energy in the Yang-Mills sector get completely transferred to the glowing black hole in the bulk as the system evolves from some initial non-equilibrium state. Further, at small values of this coupling beta, semi-holographic coupling, this transfer is very slow, as was shown in the paper as well. Further, at late times, so when thermal equilibrium is achieved, since black hole takes all the energy, this trace of f square goes to 0, and also the interaction term goes to 0 in the thermal equilibrium. So then, since this trace f square is non-linear in the boundary degrees of freedom, which are the gauge field, because we know f mu nu, because f mu nu is linear in gauge field, and then this is trace of f square, which is like f mu nu. So it will be quadratic in the gauge field. Therefore, if we want to study the quasi-normal modes of the hybrid system, which are the linear fluctuations about the equilibrium, they cannot be captured by such an operator. And so this basically motivates our current work, where we use a bit simplified version of this scalar couplings, where we replace this Yang-Mills sector on the boundary by the scalar field on the boundary, massless scalar field, and since this massless scalar field, which is linear, so we can be linearly coupled to the basically this massless scalar field is gauge invariant, so we have the linear operator. Therefore, it can capture this quasi-normal mode structure of the hybrid system. So yeah, so are there any questions till this point? Okay. Yeah, it's clear. Yeah, so I will describe this model then, where we replace basically the Yang-Mills sector on the boundary by a massless scalar field on the boundary. Now it can represent, this massless scalar field can represent some composite gauge degrees of freedom, like a meson field or a baryon field. Yeah, and it is coupled to a black hole geometry in the bulk via this massless Berg-Lilleton, just like before. Now, as I said, such a field is, since it is gauge invariant, the scalar field, it can be coupled linearly to the holographic system, unlike gauge field, and we can study this linear response of this hybrid system to perturbations about equilibrium. So the action in this case will be the first term, which in previous case it was the Yang-Mills action. Now it is just the action for this massless scalar, which we denote by chi, massless boundary scalar. And the second term is this CFT action, with the source of the CFT is proportional to this perturbative field chi, the scalar boundary scalar field chi, and beta is the semi-holographic coupling. So again, according to ADCF dictionary, this effective action WCFT is equal to the renormalized on-shell gravity action of the dual gravity theory. Where again we have just classical Einstein gravity with a negative cosmological constant and a massless Berg-Lilleton, where again this phi 0 is the leading term in the near boundary expansion of the Berg-Lilleton. Yeah, so the holographic sector has these equations. So the first one is the gravity equation, Einstein equations. So this term is just the cosmological constant corresponding to ADS. And on the right hand side, we have this energy momentum tensor of the Berg-Lilleton. And the second equation is just the Klein-Gordon equation for the Berg-Lilleton phi. Again, phi has this standard form of the near boundary expansion, where phi 0, the leading term, is which is the source for the dual CFT, which is proportional to the scalar sector chi via this semi-holographic coupling beta, and this phi d will be the normalizable mode in the d+1 bulk dimensions, right? Then the boundary scalar chi has this equation of motion, so which is just the box of chi on the left hand side, and right hand side it is sourced by this h, which is the holographic scalar CFT operator, which is dual to this bulk dilaton phi. Yeah. Yeah. So the energy momentum tensor in this case, we can find out by simply varying the action, and it is the T mu of the scalar field chi, boundary scalar chi, plus the holographic T mu. So notice that in this case there is no interaction term, unlike the case for Yang-Mills when there was Yang-Mills theory on the boundary. So this form is kind of helpful when later we reduce the consequence of the structure of the consequence, dynamical consequences because of the quasi-normal mode structure. So that will be clear later. Yeah. So then one can find the subsystem word entities, which are these, and they imply that the full T mu, the full system energy momentum tensor, is conserved in the background metric, which is just the flat metric.
Sukrut,
Yeah.
can you go back to the previous slide?
Yeah.
You have not told us what this capital H actually is, no, yet. I mean, what is it in terms of this? How do you read it off from the gravitational equations?
So yeah, so we will have the expectation value of H. Basically, we can get from holographic renormalization. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, you're going to tell about it later, or you're
Yeah, I will talk about it later. Yeah. So is everything clear so far? Any questions?
Can you go back 2 slides, please?
Yeah. This one?
Yeah. How did you arrive at the last equation? See, last time there was this coupling, and that's you did the variation with respect to that little h, and that gave you capital H. But now
Yeah.
I don't see anything like that, and there was no derivatives of chi in the first example, but now you have derivatives of chi. So what kind of coupling, I mean, will lead to this answer, what you've written?
Do you mean this, the expression for T mu?
That and this action, both, I mean, they're related.
This action.
Yeah.
This so this we start with this action basically. Last time.
Oh, you just started with this action. Okay.
Yeah,
The question, then Ayan's question is, I have then.
Okay.
It's like how is calligraphic H defined, because there's no little h anymore.
What can you repeat? How do we get the H, the holographic H? That is the question.
Yeah. Wow. What is the definition of that itself? I don't know.
Yeah, so that's the definition is just this. So holographic H is the variation with respect to small h. But yeah, so you're saying since there is no small h, so the small h here is just the chi. So basically
that's tautological, right? It's a little bit tautological now.
Okay, so the idea is that the principle is that the marginal coupling of each sector should be deformed by the operator of the other sector, right?
Okay.
So when we vary this WCFT with chi, that should give us this dilaton.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, it's just that this notation is a little bit kind of misleading. This chi is not a deformation of the coupling like you had in the previous slide.
Yeah. Sorry.
It's not the same chi. Yeah. It is, and this you cannot derive from that kind of auxiliary.
Yeah. Yes. That's what.
Yes, you can't do that here. Yeah. Here is simply, of course, you could kind of put it. You can do some trick like that, but it's kind of. It's not the same thing because there is no deformation of the first sector here in that way we had before. Yeah. So this is a new kind of coupling that you could do only if this field is gauge invariant, because chi is a gauge invariant field on its own.
Are there any
So
further
proceed.
questions? Okay. Yeah. So okay. Yeah. So now I will describe the the calculation of quasi-normal modes and the results of that of the system. So the quasi-normal modes are the eigenfunctions of linearized perturbations along equilibrium solution. So they will basically describe the relaxation or the growth of some perturbation about equilibrium solution. For this hybrid system, the simplest choice of the equilibrium state would be just the static black brane geometry in the bulk and vanishing dilaton and the vanishing boundary scalar. So the geometry would be, yeah. So another thing, so is we will work with the 2+1 dimensional boundary theory, and the dual theory will be 3+1 dimensional bulk theory, dual gravity theory. So we choose that because in ADS phi, the near boundary expansions in ADS phi involves logarithmic terms, and it is a bit difficult to do the numerics that we will later do for the non-linear simulation of the system with the when the log terms are present. So in ADS4 there are no such log terms in the near boundary expansion. So for that reason we stick to CFT3 ADS4. Yeah. So yeah, so the Schwarzschild ADS4 black brane, which will be the equilibrium state of the system, has this Eddington-Finkelstein coordinates, where here R is the bulk radial coordinate, T is the boundary time, which will be a null coordinate in the bulk, and X and Y are the boundary space coordinates. Then we have L is the ADS radius, which we will set to 1 throughout from now on, and M is the ADM mass of this black hole. So this black brane geometry is dual to a thermal equilibrium state of 2+1 dimensional quantum field theory at temperature, which is the same as the Hawking temperature of this black hole, which is given by this expression. Yeah. So we'll look at the fluctuations of the bulk electron and the boundary scalar chi about this equilibrium geometry. So we can write the bulk electron phi in terms of its Fourier decomposition like this. So, and then this equation just below it is the equation of motion of this bulk electron in terms of this small f, which is its Fourier modes. And yeah, prime denotes the derivative with respect to radial bulk coordinate. Then now the solution of this equation must satisfy correct boundary conditions at the horizon of the geometry of the black hole and as well as the boundary of the ADS space. So R equal to RH is the horizon, R equal to 0 is the boundary of the space. So at R equal to horizon, it should be ingoing, the solution should be ingoing, whereas at R equal to 0, it should satisfy these two semi-holographic boundary conditions. Yeah, so the first of these is just the equation of motion for the boundary scalar chi written in the Fourier space. So recall that the phi 0 is equal to minus beta times chi. So if you put it here, then you will see that this is just the equation of motion of boundary scalar written in the Fourier space. And on right hand side, recall that the deformation is through this holographic operator H. Yeah, and the second equation is this expression for H that Ayan and Suresh were asking before. So this we get by varying the holographic part of the action with respect to chi after doing the holographic denormalization. So here phi 0 is again the leading term in capital Phi expansion or the non-normalizable mode, whereas phi 3 is the normalizable mode, which is the coefficient of R power 3 in the capital Phi expansion near the boundary. Yeah, so note that when this beta goes to 0, then since phi 0 is just minus beta chi, phi 0 would be 0. And that is precisely the boundary condition that is used for computing the quasi-normal modes of a black brane, like a ADS Schwarzschild black brane. So it correctly reduces to the that condition in the decoupling limit, these two conditions. Yeah, so basically for a given wave vector k, such the solution to that equation, this equation that I showed, that satisfy the correct boundary conditions, both at r equal to 0 and r equal to RH, can only exist for discrete set of frequencies omega, and these are called the quasi-normal mode frequencies. Then we basically compute this quasi-normal frequencies of this hybrid system numerically. We see that we produce the correct quasi-normal mode frequencies of this ADS4 Schwarzschild black brane in the beta goes to 0 limit, along with the two modes omega equal to plus minus k, which shall correspond to this boundary scalar, right? So when beta goes to 0, the right hand side will be 0. So the boundary will be completely decoupled from the bulk, and this scalar, boundary scalar, will just have omega equal to plus minus k, two modes. So then note that this symmetry, the model has a shift symmetry in both the bulk dilaton phi and the boundary scalar chi, because the action only involved the kinetic term for chi. So obviously if you add a constant, then the action won't change. Similarly, since the bulk dilaton is massless, so the gravity action will only have the kinetic term in capital phi. Then again, therefore it also has this shift symmetry by constant. Sorry. So this will correspond to 2 zero modes in the theory, corresponding to each of these symmetries. But
this is not why you have 2 zero modes, because you phi 0 is and chi 0 are not unrelated, right? Because
I'm saying that, yeah. So one of those will be lifted when we have beta non-zero.
When beta is equal to 0, you say then you have 2 modes because of these two independent shifts.
Yeah,
okay, yeah. I see. Yeah, but you wrote symmetry of the model, so I got confused.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, so only when beta equal to 0, these two shifts are unrelated, but in the presence of non-zero beta, because of this relation that we have phi zeros minus beta chi 0. So it's actually phi is the leading term of this near boundary expansion, phi 0, not that one is minus beta times chi. But from that we can easily see that that implies this shift of capital phi 0 is minus beta chi of 0. So that will imply that one of these two modes are lifted when we turn on the beta of the system. Yeah, so we'll use temperature is equal to 1 throughout the calculations. So all the plots that I will show will be assuming that all quantities are properly normalized by the proper powers of t, and so that t equal to 1.
Just a second, Sukrut. Just to answer Suresh's question, this symmetry is there always for any value of beta, this shift symmetry. So chi can also be thought of as a coupling, like you were suggesting, but it could be something like the theta parameter.
Okay.
So it's like an axion. It's an extra degree of freedom axion, which has a holographic counterpart, which couples to also holographic part.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So a typical ADS4 Schwarzschild black brane will have this kind of a quasi-normal mode structure. So this is the plot of imaginary frequency plane for k equal to 0. So here this is not for our hybrid system. This is just for the separate Schwarzschild ADS4 black brane. So they have this famous Christmas tree structure, where this is an infinite tower of frequencies arranged in this particular pattern, which looks like a Christmas tree. Then these lowest two modes they usually govern the relaxation of the system back to equilibrium, because they have the smallest imaginary part in the frequency, they are longest living modes always. Yeah, and the pattern of this relaxation is a ring down pattern, in a sense that the perturbation decays to zero in an oscillatory manner, because these frequency also have some non-zero real part. Okay, so when we will, yeah, so I will describe now when we turn on this coupling, semi-holographic coupling beta, how do these frequencies move in this complex omega plane. So the first plot, this one, where all dots are blue, that is for beta equal to 0. But note that here there will be, as I mentioned before, 2 zero modes because of the decoupled boundary theory which lie at the origin. Now, as we turn on the beta, what happens is that, so for example, look at this plot with beta equal to 0.2. There is one mode that comes. Okay, so firstly, there is one of these two decouple modes that were at the origin. One of those decouples, sorry, one of these two zero modes at the origin, one of those decouples and start moving along the negative imaginary axis. So if we just look at that mode, for example, this one,
What do you
we
mean by
just
decouple here, Sukrut? It's no. What you mean is not decouple. You mean lifted or something.
yeah.
Degeneracy is lifted. You don't mean decouple. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so that one starts moving down along negative imaginary axis. So here it is the one, the upper one, right? And two things happen, that one mode starts moving up from the negative imaginary axis, which is this mode, as we turn on the beta, and there is another mode that comes down on the along the positive imaginary axis. So what happens is that this mode that comes from the origin and the one that comes from negative imaginary infinity, they two collide as you increase the beta. So the collision happens somewhere between beta 0.4 and beta 0.5. And after collision, these two poles just start moving almost horizontally, not exactly, but almost horizontally, like this. And eventually the position of the poles become independent of beta for large enough beta, compared again to the temperature, because you have set temperature 1 everywhere. So when beta becomes large compared to temperature, so the system only has then one scale, temperature. Yeah, firstly, the system becomes independent of beta, and these poles align themselves along this original Christmas tree with their new positions, which are denoted by these red dots, exactly midway between the old positions. Now, since this dependence on this beta goes away, the system, there is an emergent conformality at large beta, because now there is only one scale in the system, which is temperature. Another feature is this pole that is always there on the positive imaginary axis, which as we increase beta, that moves down and comes closer to the origin. So although it looks like this, since this is a growing mode, that might make the system unstable, but system is stable. And so I will explain that how that works. So essentially, that will be clear with the more clear with the results of the nonlinear simulation. Essentially, what happens is that this unstable mode that is on the positive imaginary axis, that drives the energy away from the black hole towards the boundary scalar at very early times, and then this energy is again absorbed by the black hole very slowly in a irreversible fashion. So if you look at this beta equal to 0.2 plot, so at around at the value, small values of coupling, so here beta equal to 0.2, this unstable mode is very far away from the origin on the imaginary axis, whereas this stable mode, which is closest to the origin, which is very much close to the origin, right? So and that basically governs the decay of the solution at late times to the black hole, and since it is very close to the origin, it is very long living, and therefore this decay is very slow. This feature, as I told before, was also found in the earlier paper by Christian and others on this, when the boundary theory was the youngest, that the decay to the black hole at late times was very slow. Yeah, so this will be clear with the nonlinear simulation plots. Yeah, so this is just the all the plots combined together. So basically blue dots are those for beta equal to 0. And as we vary beta continuously, increase beta continuously, all these plots follow these red trajectories, and the directions denoted by these black dots. So there is a one mode that comes from the origin and another from the negative infinity to collide more almost horizontally. There's a one unstable pole that comes down along the positive imaginary axis, and these uh, all other Poisson modes move like this on the kind of curved trajectories, and at the end they align themselves along the original Christmas tree at the positions midway between the original ones. So yeah, I wanted to show an animation of this. So maybe I will show that. So this is basically animation for this, as we one varies the beta. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So okay. Yeah. So as I explained, there is this saturation at large values of beta compared to T again, and therefore the an emergent conformality. Then yeah, so note that the total energy is just the sum of the energies of each sector, because recall that the energy momentum tensor in this case is just the sum of the two subsector energy momentum tensors. So the energy will be the sum of the two, and since each of these is a positive definite, therefore the none of the and each of E chi and E holographic are bounded above by the total energy. None of them can grow unboundedly, so the system is stable. And as I described, this unstable mode drives the energy from black hole to the boundary scalar at early times, whereas the stable mode, so yeah, we'll call it a Drude pole, uh, which is based on so it so such kind of poles have also been observed in some condensed matter holographic models by Matteo and others. So yeah, I'll reference that paper later. Oh, sorry. So okay, okay, fine. Yeah, so I'll reference that paper later. So this pole is just that pole that comes from the origin. This the one of the rifted zero mode, one of the decoupled zero modes.
Lifted zero modes.
Lifted zero mode, sorry. Yeah, so that we are calling it a Drude mode. So from now on, when I say Drude mode, that will be that pole. Okay. And that drives the, as I said, eventual irreversible transfer of energy back to the black hole at later times. Okay, so yeah, so this is the plot which basically says that at small values of beta, so basically this is the establishes dependence of the imaginary part of this Drude pole as a function of beta. So for at small values of beta, so at small values of beta, so imaginary part of omega upon beta square just goes to a constant. In other words, imaginary part of omega is some constant times beta square. Yeah, so yeah, are there any questions so far? I will now describe the nonlinear dynamics.
So the key part of the argument, Sukrut, is that the individual energies are positive definite. I mean,
Yeah.
non-negative. Sorry, the black
Yeah.
hole mass and the kinetic term, the kinetic energy of the scalar field, and the sum is constant. So none of them can grow indefinitely, and so the instability cannot really happen because both of them are bounded. If it was a difference of two, then both could have grown keeping the difference constant, but here it cannot happen. So that's, and then only the black hole has some irreversibility built in, so it will it's the one that will do the final absorption. That's something. Okay.
Okay. So I'll describe. So starting from some non-equilibrium initial state, how does this hybrid system reaches its equilibrium? So so there is a standard way in which one do this for the holographic part, where one start with some bulk metric, which is asymptotically ADS and also has a black hole in it. So this is the bulk metric we start with, which has some unknown functions A and S. And yeah, we will consider only the metric which is homogeneous in the spatial coordinates on the boundary. So everything is just a function of the bulk coordinate R and the boundary time T. So we have this A and S have some near boundary expansion of this form with these time dependent coefficients. And also we have this bulk dilaton phi, which has again some near boundary expansion of this form. So in order to solve this holographic system, what one has to do is one has to specify the boundary conditions, essentially means the determines the boundary metric and initial value of this source. So since we have the boundary metric to be the flat Minkowski metric, setting A0, the leading term in expansion of A to 1 and leading term in expansion of S0 to be 1, will mean that the boundary metric is flat Minkowski. So that's why these boundary conditions, and we have to specify some value for phi 0 of t at all times as a boundary condition. And even after doing this, in this system, there is some residual gauge freedom corresponding to some shift of this radial coordinate by some function of time. So that can be fixed by choosing some value for the subleading coefficient of this function A. So we choose A of t to be 0. Yeah, so and the initial condition that one would need to specify to solve the equations, holographic equations, would be some initial profile for phi. So phi is a function of R at initial time. Then the value of the normalizable mode in the expansion of capital A, which is A sub 3 at initial time, and also the phi 0 and the time derivative of phi 0 at initial time. So in summary, one has to give the boundary conditions at all times and the initial conditions to solve the corresponding system of equations to this geometry with the dilaton.
But,
So this is
sorry. If you go back, I mean, how do you know phi 0 t? Okay, you're just saying only for the gravitational system.
yeah, only for the gravitational part.
Okay, so this is how, okay, you do, okay, fine. Okay, so then why do you need phi not phi 0 dot? You don't need that because you are already given phi 0 t for all time, right?
Yeah, sorry. Okay. Yeah, for holography we don't need, but since we are interested in the solving the dynamics of the hybrid system, which apart from all this also involves a boundary scalar which has its own equation of motion, and it is sourced, if you remember, by this the expectation value of this boundary CFT operator H. So then we have to basically solve this holographic thing side also, and also that boundary scalar equation self-consistently. So yeah, I will describe that part later. For now, just focus on this holographic part. So once we give the appropriate initial conditions as well as the boundary conditions at all times, then one can, so the standard way to do this has been described by Chesler and Yaffe in this paper, and it is used commonly, this method of characteristics to solve such dynamics in asymptotically ADS geometry. This f prime is the radial derivative of some function f. This is the definition. Whereas this d plus derivative is the ingoing derivative along the ingoing null coordinate, and which is defined like this. So with that, the Einstein equations and the this Klein-Gordon equation for bulk scalar will reduce to this set of 5 equations, which essentially we have to solve, which can be done numerically to solve this holographic system. Okay, yeah. So then what we have to do is, on top of that, we also have to solve the boundary system, whose equation is this, the scalar field self-consistently along with this. So this can be done using an iterative procedure, which has been also done in the previous work with the Yang-Mills, where the boundary sector was Yang-Mills. And yeah, so the method is as follows. So we first solve the holographic system with appropriate boundary conditions and the initial conditions. So in this case, we also need these two initial conditions: the value of phi 0 at t equal to 0 and phi 0 dot at t equal to 0. Because remember that phi 0 is just minus beta times chi. So that essentially translates to the initial condition for this boundary scalar chi. So with
Sorry,
that,
I mean, why you need that? Because at the first step of the iteration, you simply have chi double dot is equal to 0.
0, yeah.
Because then you need for this, you need this, right? That's the only reason you need it. Otherwise, you just need the source at all time. Otherwise, you cannot solve the gravitational system. So what you mean here is that you are simply keeping the initial conditions fixed at every step of the iteration, and the initial conditions of chi and chi dot specifies chi for all time at the 0th step is simply a constant plus a constant times t, and this is what you input to the holographic system and obtain capital HT. That's what you mean, right?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. So yeah, so as I answered, we always need to specify source at all times to solve this holographic system. So therefore, we solve this first. We just solve this boundary equation without any capital H on right hand side, just 0 on right hand side. So that will be in homogeneous case just chi double dot equal to 0. So you just yeah. So we start with that. Use that as the solution. I mean, use solution to that equation as some initial condition. We input that to the holographic source and solve the holographic source. And from that, we holographic code and we obtain this capital H of t. Now, once we have this capital H at the first step, then we use this capital H in the second step to solve this scalar equation and obtain nu chi of t. Now again, this nu chi of t, since it's phi 0 of t is minus beta chi of t, it will provide some new source phi 0 to the holographic system, and now the holographic system can be solved with this new source and obtain a new capital H of t. Then we'll just keep doing this till all these iterations converge. So after step 3, one would solve the equation of motion of the scalar boundary scalar again with this a capital H t obtained in third step, and we just keep doing till the iteration converge. So previous, so there have been papers before where this has been done, also in this Yang-Mills case. So typically the iterations do converge, and also very quickly in say 3 or 4 iterations. And also this convergence of iterations implies that the full system Ward entity is satisfied, as can be seen from the corresponding numerical plots, and also the energy is conserved of the full system. So is this process clear? Is this method clear? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So now, as I mentioned, yeah, given boundary conditions at all times and initial conditions, we can obtain the unique solution for the holographic part. Then, yeah, the initial conditions are held fixed throughout the iterations. And once the iterations converge, the Ward entity is automatically satisfied and the full system energy is conserved. So now, yeah, so these are the plots of this simulation. So the first one is that of the boundary scalar, chi as a function of t, and the lower two are the energies of the boundary sector and the black hole respectively. So firstly, this plot, the upper plot, so that I have edited with the hand because this plot is kind of misleading in this time range. So so if you see that this E chi at later time is decreasing very slowly. That means, and yeah, so E chi is just the proportional to the chi dot, right? Half chi dot square. So that would mean that the slope of chi in the first graph is, well, not quite constant, but it changes very slowly. So here it is not very clear from this range of time. So what essentially happens that the slope keep decreasing, and at very late times that will just become constant, which will mean that chi dot is constant, chi dot is zero, or this E chi, the energy of the boundary scalar, will just decay to zero at late time. Right, and then so the feature that I that I anticipated before, that initially the boundary scalar absorb all the energy from the black, not all the energy, sorry, absorbs energy from the black hole very quickly, and then it slowly decays. So the black hole energy initially goes down and then slowly increases. Yeah, so this initial transfer of energy to the boundary scalar, that was governed by this. So again, this is the plot of beta equal to 0.2 that I showed earlier. So this unstable mode governs the initial transfer to the boundary, whereas this just very close to the origin, this Drude mode, that governs the slow decay at later times of the energy to the black hole. Yeah. So yeah, so the nice feature is that we have this nice separation of scale in the model, where this always happens very quickly. The transfer to the boundary scalar or the energy transfer to the black hole always happen at very late times. Yeah. So yeah, another thing is that the entropy of the black hole grows monotonically, as can be seen in this plot, where even though we saw that the energy doesn't is not monotonic with time, and also this entropy grows very slow.
What do you mean by the entropy of the black hole here?
Okay, so the entropy of the black hole is proportional to the area of the apparent horizon, basically. Area of apparent horizon of the black hole.
Okay. You will need to hurry up a little bit.
Yeah. So I will skip this part.
No, you have some time. You can
Okay.
you can still show those things.
Yeah, so these are just the two quick plots. So on left hand side we have E chi dot by E chi, and E chi is the energy of the boundary scalar. So E chi dot means time derivative. So it basically shows the rate of exchange, rate of change of the E chi. And whereas on right hand side we have S dot by S dot. So S again is entropy of the black hole. So this is the rate at which the entropy grows, if you will, on the right hand side. So the plot shows that the E chi dot by E chi goes to a constant at late times, whereas S dot by S goes to zero, drops to zero. So thus, at asymptotically late times, there is some non-zero rate of exchange of energy between the two sectors, but the entropy production goes to zero at late times. Then yeah, so this is another small observation. So if this is the plot again that I showed before, E chi is a function of time. First, so at late times, this E chi decays exponentially, something like alpha e power minus gamma t, where we can fit alpha and gamma to this plot and find their values. And this time at which this scalar energy reaches its maximum, it is independent. We find that it is independent of beta. So at all beta, it has always this value, which is around 3. Then we find that this alpha and gamma, they scale as beta square with semi-holographic coupling. So as a consequence of these three things, if one tries to see what is the scaling of the area of this curve, area under this curve, so it will be just the integration of alpha e power minus gamma t, which is from this time t max to infinity, well, plus some positive value. Yeah, so then since after integration this gamma will come down, and since alpha and gamma both square as beta square, so this beta square dependence conserves from this thing, and the whole thing is exponential of minus beta square time t max. And since t max is, as I said, is independent of beta, so we have this beta dependence for the area. And when we take beta goes to zero limit, this is not really zero, but it is some constant. So ideally, one would expect that when beta goes to zero limit, there is no exchange between the two sectors, exchange of energy between two sectors. So the E chi, which starts from zero, energy of the scalar, starts from zero as initial condition, should stay zero, right? Because it doesn't talk to black hole, but yet the area does not go to zero in beta goes to zero limit. This is a bit puzzling.
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting feature. We should ask our quantum information theorist or something, because it seems like you have some sort of energy time kind of uncertainty principle like thing, which is a bit baffling. It tells you that if you have to transfer energy very fast, you cannot transfer a lot of energy, right? There is some kind of limit, because when beta goes to zero, the rate of transfer is also faster. Okay, Tmax, of course, here, as you say, doesn't change much, but this quasi-normal mode pole actually goes on the rate. The quasi-normal mode pole goes to infinity, or sort of is very fast. But on the other hand, the amount of energy that is transferred is small. And but this is something that needs to be understood if it has some kind of interesting interpretation in terms of like quantum thermodynamics or something. This is something that is, yeah, anyway.
Yeah,
Just a
so
comment, sir.
yeah, thanks. Yeah, so this is the last part of the talk. So where I
Just one
just
question: how robust is this conclusion that it goes to a constant? I mean, this is I mean, there are all. It's one thing to do it for arbitrary beta or something, but this is
No,
actually
we tried
where you
arbitrary
made some
beta.
approximations. Maybe exact answer is zero. You don't made many assumptions.
So we tried many initial conditions where chi and chi dot could have different values initially, and also the bulk profile of the dilaton could
But
vary.
if you started with a strict beta equal to zero, you don't. You won't get anything, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. That's a little bit. That's yeah. This is something that needs to be understood. I think they might have some kind of recently people have tried to understand many of this non-equilibrium things.
Yeah, no. I mean, if you're saying that beta equal to 0 plus is different from beta equal to 0, that is interesting.
Yes, indeed, yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to finish in like 7 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is the last part. So I will describe the quasi-normal modes when k is not equal to 0. That is, which means that there is inhomogeneity in the boundary theory. So I'll just first quickly give the results of some interesting results that I will describe quickly now. So there is a diffusive mode at small k that we find in this when k is not equal to 0. Then further there is this diffusive port that exists at small k sees a crossover to some propagating modes as one increases k. And also there exists some zero modes in this hybrid system, which are actually coupled to all other quasi-normal modes, unlike the case when the two things were decoupled, and for a large range of beta. So firstly about this, I'll just quickly say that there is again a saturation at even at non-zero k, just like for k equal to 0, and emergence of conformality at large beta. So the poles just align themselves along the original Christmas tree, just like for k equal to 0, and the beta scale drops, and there's an emergent conformality. Then about the diffusive port at small k for the range of beta less than equal to 0.49 defined in the unit where temperature is 1. There is a diffusive pole again whose dispersion relation is omega is minus I d k square, where k is the diffusion constant. So then we also found how this d diffusion constant varies with beta. So it basically smoothly goes to 0 with increasing beta and then becomes negative. So that would mean another kind of instability, something like clumping instability in this model. So yeah, this is the plot of the diffusion constant. So we see that as we increase the beta, the diffusion constant drops to 0, here, and then it smoothly continues to negative values. So only 2 points are shown here just to illustrate that it goes to negative. Then about the crossover. So yeah, let me just show you this. So this is for beta equal to 0.15, and I'm just showing the lowest two polynomial modes. So first blue one is the k equal to 0, and then I slowly increase the k. So if you see the second one, k equal to 0.6, the mode at the origin, one of those comes down, and the dispersion relation of this is the diffusive dispersion relation they are just described. The one that comes out down from the origin with increasing k. Again, for a fixed beta, this is unlike all the previous snapshot that I showed long ago. This is for fixed beta. As you k increase, this is a diffusive pole that comes down, and then this is the Drude pole, if you remember from my previous discussion, the second one, which is closest to the origin. So that moves up as we increase the k, and the two collide, and both become propagative. So the diffusive dispersion relation of this diffusive pole becomes a kind of sound like dispersion relation. Sound like dispersion relation at the value where the two collide. So here it is at k equal to 0.07. So if you see, yeah, so this is the plot of these dispersion relations. Again, for the same thing, same case, we type 0.15. So this is the real part of omega as a function of k for this diffusive pole, and imaginary part of omega as a function of k for this diffusive pole. So initially the pole is purely on the imaginary axis, so real part is 0 and imaginary part is diffusion like. And after this collision at 0.07, k equal to 0.07, the real part is a crossover, and it eventually becomes linear, whereas the imaginary part becomes almost constant, right? So we see that there is this crossover has a scaling exponent delta, which is universal in the sense that it is independent of beta, and its value is approximately 0.5. So we are here in this formula, k equal to kc is the crossover value of k. Yeah, so just to mention that this kind of behavior where these two dissipative mode collide and become propagating light has been observed in also the this condensed matter focused works, which are summarized in this review, but they don't have the instabilities that we have in our model. Yeah, so I will just, yeah, okay, so this is the last part. So this is about the existence of zero modes. So maybe I'll just very quickly show an animation that will illustrate this. Yes, please notice the animation. So that will say, so this is for a beta is equal to 0.35, and we increase k from 0 to larger values here up to 3, I think. And this shows that how this pole moves in this imaginary omega plane. So first you saw that I described these two Drude diffusion collided and became propagating. And now what happens is that this pole, which is on negative imaginary axis, it moves up and collides with the pole from the positive imaginary axis that comes down. But most importantly, when this pole went up, it passed to the origin. It says that at non-zero k, there is that omega equal to 0 is achieved. So there is a mode which corresponds to omega at non-zero k equal to 0, right? Because that mode that passed through the origin for non-zero k. Yeah, so that is what we mean by the zero mode. Beta at k not equal to 0 is equal to 0, and these exist for beta less than 0.49, for all the beta less than 0.49. So since there are zero modes, that means that the stable thermal so the stable solution need not be the black brane solution that we considered in the homogeneous case, right? Because there are zero modes. So the fate is not very clear of the system, what will happen in presence of inhomogeneities. It could be that so there is a possibility of turbulence and also the equipartition of energy between the boundary and the black hole when there is inhomogeneity in the system. So we will so by doing the
Is this like the Gregory-Laflamme instability in some sense?
Suresh,
Yeah, so
precisely that. Yeah, it's very nice comment. Yeah. And this is also why I believe that it might lead to some form of, I wouldn't say turbulence in this sense of, but you know, this endpoint of Gregory-Laflamme instability has recently been found. It is simply the jet instability of a fluid. The jet, a stream of water from a tap can become unstable, and it
Yeah.
forms all this fractal-like structures. So there could be something of that kind. I mean, a kind of, yeah. So yeah, it's the endpoint here, of course, is a three-dimensional problem, not a one-dimensional problem, but it could be more complicated. So we need somebody with really someone like Christian to help us to get this done. Yeah.
Yeah, there'll be some clumping at least, right? This is clumping of
Yeah, exactly. Okay, no, there's a different kind of clumpiness that happens because the diffusion constant that Sukrut showed, that becomes unstable also, but for larger value of beta. But that is sort of a clumping instability that people have seen in you know, binary fluid mixtures and all this. But that probably is not like that should not lead to equipartition or turbulence. Most
okay.
likely, yeah. Huh.
yeah, so thanks for the comment. Yeah, and interestingly, so this K0, the zero mode K, that decreases with beta and it drops to 0 at some beta value is interestingly 0.49, which is also the value where diffusion constant becomes 0. And also this K0 shows a scaling behavior with beta in this case, with the critical exponent has a value 0.5, which was also the same critical exponent for, well, diffusion constant. That is some interesting observation. Yeah, so this is the plot of this K, sorry, I am written it KF, which means K0, the zero mode that I'm talking about here. Sorry. So yeah, so this is K0 as a function of beta. So it drops down and becomes 0. So here we find a scaling behavior, which goes with the scaling exponent 0.5. So yeah, so the summary. So we saw that there is a saturation of the quasi-normal modes and there's an emergent conformality for large beta. Then we saw there exists an unstable mode and also a Drude-like mode for k equal to 0, the homogeneous hybrid quasi-normal modes. This Drude-like mode is parametrically close to the origin for small values of beta. Now this unstable mode, the first one, that drives the quick transfer of energy to the boundary sector at early times, whereas the Drude mode drives the slow, irreversible decay of the system to the black hole. Then we saw that there is a diffusive mode for small k, and also the crossover from this diffusive to the propagating like mode. And this crossover has a universal exponent delta 0.5, which is independent of value of beta. And also we saw that there are these zero modes in the system for a large range of beta. So just as a quick outlook, one would like, so one can replace this boundary scalar with a kinetic theory on the boundary. So in case of kinetic theory, the energy momentum tensor is linear in the kinetic theory distribution function. Therefore, in this case, these metric fluctuations won't decouple. And therefore, we can study the quasi-normal modes of the hybrid system by using the metric couplings. Also, as was said earlier by Ayan, so it will be interesting to do this nonlinear simulation with the presence of inhomogeneity in the boundary theory, which can tell us about the fate of the system, which could also be some turbulence of equipartition. Yeah, so that will be. Thank you. Any questions?
Sukrut,
Yeah.
the whole process is cyclic, right? Completely. The energies you start off with for the two separate subsystems are the same at the end point.
Can you repeat? Cyclic in what sense?
Like you start off with zero energy for the scalar and it ends up at 0 and the black hole like leaks out some energy.
No, but if you start with some finite energy in the scalar, that will be served by the black hole also.
Okay.
So basically, black hole sucks all the energy.
At the end.
Full energy is conserved, but all the energy get transferred to the black hole.
Okay.
Hi, can I also ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I have two questions and one comment. So my first question is how do you determine if your evolution is converged? Do you look at the Ward identities or do you do
Yeah,
this?
we look at the Ward entities, also the time derivatives of the total energy. So they in three iterations we saw that they converge, and
Works.
it was 10 power minus 10 or 9 something.
So 10 to the minus 10. Okay, yeah, I see. So you still do this global relaxation, not pointwise in time.
What do you mean global?
Yeah, so implying the self-consistency relations between the boundary equations of motion and the bulk equations of motion, this you do for iterative incomplete.
Yeah, it is iterative only.
I see. Okay.
Just like it was for the Yang-Mills.
Yeah, I see. Good. And my last comment was, I think at least once you initialize your system with some profile for the scalar field, which will in general be an excited state in the field theory. And once these excitations are more or less gone, my expectation would be that you actually do not really need to solve the full self-consistent back-reacted system, but it would actually be sufficient to just compute the thermodynamics of your ADS4 black brane. So the relation, so all the results for the scalar VEF, the energy density and the pressure, and then simply plug in this relation in your boundary equations of motion. Have you tried that? Probably Ian knows what I mean, or?
No, I haven't thought about it. It could be a good suggestion because you're saying that because it's a very tiny, because it should be a very tiny effect on the scalar side. Or you could, the scalar thing you could solve somehow, you said. I didn't get exactly what you mean.
We solve in thermal equilibrium, yeah, for many different values for the energy density. And what you need in a boundary equation, what you call, I think, capital A.
Adiabatic, it is very slow. This is okay because of adiabatic. Yeah, I guess it's certainly true. If your beta is very small, one can do it. But for little bit large beta, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, the reason why I bring this up, I know that this works in other systems, and I expect that it works here as well. So
interesting. That's something we should check then.
Yeah.
So your suggestion is to check for adiabaticity, essentially.
In principle, I mean, you see your scalar VEF and everything when your time evolution doesn't have very large gradients, then of course it will behave more or less close to equilibrium. So the stress tensor that you use in your boundary equations, it will be the holographic equilibrium stress tensor.
Yeah, that's precisely what you see because the entropy is constant.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, that will most certainly work. And it's very easy to do, you just need the thermodynamics and then do an integrate of your boundary equations. That's all.
For this work, we have nonlinear part, we have simply used the code you and Alex developed actually. But we didn't improve or do anything more with it, except that we put in this extra feature that you could put in arbitrary initial conditions. That's yeah, but that's a good suggestion. Thanks. Yeah. More questions? Okay, then since we have no more question, then let us conclude. And this has been the last talk of the semester also. So it was very great to have you here, and we will resume in August. And certainly we'll have some talks from some of the people in the audience soon in the next semester. Hopefully, yeah. So Amitav is supposed to give a talk, and then also Christian, we should give a talk. Hopefully Tony will also give a talk.
I'm too busy.
Okay.
What temperatures do you have right now in Chennai?
is 34 or 35. Now it's very strong breeze. It was really alarmingly strong breeze. So I don't need a fan or AC. Still.
We are over 30 degrees also, so
Oh,
we are coming close to Indian weather conditions.